All right, so for your math pack percent, this is page 3. Now, if you notice at the top of the photocopy, it says fractions and decimals as percent. So we're going to talk about fractions and decimals and percents and how all three of those are interrelated, just like when we were doing the lesson. So, number 1, express as a percent. So if you take a look at number 1, so numbers 1 all the way to 8 is expressing as a percent, and all of them have 100 as the denominator, so they are all easy. 17 over 100 is 17%, because, of course, if you have 100 on the bottom, percent means out of 100, so whatever's on the top, that's your percentage. So that's how you do numbers 1 all the way to 8. Let's talk about number 9. Number 9 has a fraction, but it doesn't have 100 on the bottom. So what you need to do is change it. So you have 1 over 2, so that is a fraction, with 2 as the denominator. And you need to change it to something with 100 as the denominator. So remember the math facts, the 100 math facts from the lesson. We've got 2 times 50 is 100, so 1 times 50 is 50, which gives you 50%. So number 9, 10, 11, and 12 is where you need to figure out, you've got a fraction, you need to change it into a fraction that has 100 as the denominator, and then write the percent. Now, you've also got number 13. So let's take a look at number 13. This is where we're going to start using decimals. So number 13, I have 0.65, and I have to change it into a fraction with 100 on the bottom. Now remember from the lesson, when you've got a decimal, here's your tenths and your 100ths, and of course whatever you have, the first 2 digits, that's going to be your new numerator. Think about it this way, if this is the 100th column, then here's your 100 over here, so whatever you have, 65, goes on top of your 100. Let's talk about number 17. Number 17, it says write each fraction as a percent. Now we've done this before, where you're given 7 over 10, and you need to write it as a percent. Now changing a fraction to a percent, you find the equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, and then you've got the percent. So 10 times something is 100, 10 times 10. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 7 times 10 is 70. So I have 70%. So 17 all the way to 22, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to take those percentages, those fractions, and you're going to change them to percentages by finding the denominator of 100. Let's talk about number 20. Actually, if you take a look at number 20, this is still changing a fraction to a decimal, but take a look at number 20. You're going to need to find lowest terms first, so that your fraction has a denominator that you can turn into 100. Number 20, you're going to have to find lowest terms. 21 and 22, you're also going to have to find lowest terms as well. All right, let's take a look at 23. On number 23, I have a decimal, which I am once again going to change into a fraction and then change into a percent. So if I have 0.3, what does that equal over 100? And what does that equal as a percent? Now remember when you're doing decimals, this is the tenths. But since you're putting 100 on the bottom, you're going to be adding a 0 because you need to have these two digits, the tenths and the hundredths, to go on top of your 100. So you've got 3, but it's actually 30. So what it would be is 3 over 10 in the 10th column, but 30 over 100 because you do need to use the hundredths column because you've got 100. And then of course, 30 over 100 is 30%. So that's how you're going to do 23, 24, and 25. And now let's talk about 26. So for 26, write each decimal as a percent. So I have 0.4. Now remember, when you're going directly from decimals to percentages, the easiest way is powers of 10. Now, just like in the lesson, you just multiply by 100. So you're going to move that decimal 2 spots over, and now you've got 40%. So that's how you change decimals to percents. You multiply by 100. So you're going to do the same thing for 26 all the way to 31. You just move that decimal 2 spots to the right to find the percentage. All right, now let's take a look at 32. Number 32 is asking you how to kind of compare the percents, the decimals, and the fractions. And so you're going to replace the little dot with greater than, smaller than, or equal to. So what you have to do is you have to figure out, is one bigger than the other, or are they equivalent? So let's do an example of number 32. I've got 0.25, or 25 hundredths. Is that the same as 30%? So the easiest way to do it is figure out, let's change them to the same unit. Now I can change my decimal to a percent by timesing by 100. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to times this by 100 to figure out which percent it's going to be. So now I have 25%. Times by 100, I move the decimal 2 spots to the right to make it bigger. So I have 25% and 30%. They're not the same, so I can't use the equal sign. So are they bigger or smaller? Which one's bigger? Don't forget, the mouth eats the bigger one. So 0.25, or 25 hundredths, is smaller than 30%. So when you're doing questions 32 all the way to 37, that is how you do it. You're going to figure out, put them in the same unit first. So you'll notice I took my decimal and I changed it to a percent so that I can compare them. Let's do one more example. Let's do 33 as well. So for number 33, I have 1 over 3, and I need to compare it with 30%. Now, there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to change my fraction to a decimal. Sorry, I'm going to change my fraction to a percent. Now, if you remember from the lesson, changing a fraction to a percent, first of all, you want to see if you can figure out, is there an equivalent fraction with 100 on the bottom? But 3 is not part of my 100 math facts. So I can't find an equivalent fraction with 100 on the bottom. So whenever that happens, because that's the easiest way, you're going to have to do it the second way. Not the easiest, still possible. You take your 3 and you divide it into the 1. And this will get you a decimal, which will then get you a percent. So, little outside calculation. I take my 3, going to divide it into 1. Now 3 can't go into 1, so I'm already started. 3 can go into 10 though. 3 goes into 10 3 times.